There are things you only understand in hindsight. You sit in the kitchen later, looking out the window, and suddenly it all fits together, like a puzzle you've been struggling with for months. Then one morning you wake up, yawn, glance at it, and see the whole picture, and you think, how did I not see it? How? But back then, I didn't see anything. I was happy. I thought that finally, this was it, the very thing I had dreamed of since I was 20. A family, a home, a man by my side, and a little boy who needed a mother. I've been a preschool teacher for 7 years. The intermediate group, 4, 5-year-olds. That's my age, my kids. I know what a classroom smells like before a holiday pageant, a mix of glue, tempera paint, and childish excitement. I know what a child who isn't hugged at home looks like. He always reaches for an adult a little more cautiously, like reaching for warmth but afraid of getting burned. I know how to calm a crying 3-year-old on their first day. How to explain to a 5-year-old that death isn't scary, it's just very far away. Children are my thing. It's the one thing I've never doubted. But the rest of it was more complicated. I'm 30 when I meet Victor. Not 30-something, not around 30, exactly 30. I had recently celebrated it quietly with my friend Kate at a cafe, over a glass of white wine and conversations about how life was just beginning. Kate, she always knew how to say the right things. Lily, you're still just a girl. You have your whole life ahead of you. I smiled, nodded, but inside, what was inside, I didn't quite understand myself. Not sadness, no, more like a quiet anticipation that something was about to happen. Had to happen. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment my grandmother left me. I rent it out. The income is small but steady. It's enough for me. I rent a room for myself closer to work. It's more convenient that way. My parents, Helen and Stephen, live in the next neighborhood over. We see each other every weekend. Mom bakes apple pie and always tries to send me home with something to eat, as if I can't feed myself. Dad is more silent than talkative, but he fixes everything, from leaky faucets to my mood. I love them. I know how to love in general. That's probably my main quality and, at the same time, my main vulnerability. I meet Victor at the end of September. Our preschool runs a weekend enrichment program on Saturdays for kids aged 5 and up, run out of the community center. It's not just for our students. Anyone can sign up. Victor brought his son, Michael, there. I was teaching the class myself that day. A coworker was sick. They asked me to fill in. Honestly, I was a little annoyed. I had planned to visit my mom on Saturday, but I came, set out the flashcards, got out the modeling clay. The children who arrived were all different. Loud, quiet, curious, withdrawn. Michael was one of the quiet ones. Very quiet. Light-haired, blue-eyed, with a face that even at 5 or 6 knew how to be unreadable. He sat in the outermost chair, folded his hands neatly on his knees, and watched me attentively, seriously, not at all like a child. "What's your name?" I asked. "Michael. Michael, do you like to sculpt?" "I don't know. I haven't tried." I handed him a piece of blue modeling clay. He took it carefully with 2 fingers, as if it were something fragile. "Sculpt whatever you want, anything at all." He thought for a long time. While the other kids were already mashing and rolling their clay with shouts and laughter, Michael sat, holding the clay, and thought. Then he began to sculpt, very focused, without getting distracted. When he showed me, it was a dog. A bit lopsided, without ears, but unmistakably a dog with a tail and 4 legs. "It's beautiful," I said honestly. "It's for my mom," he said. "She loved dogs." I didn't immediately understand what loved meant the past tense. Then I understood. After the class, in the coat room, I saw his father, Victor Hayes, tall, broad-shouldered, with a calm, confident face, one of those men you'd call solid, well-dressed, but without being flashy. A well-cut coat, a quiet voice. "Thank you," he said to me, while Michael was zipping up his jacket. "He hasn't been out much lately. After my wife's death, we both kind of shut down." "I'm so sorry," I said, and it was true. He looked at me attentively, assessing, but not intrusively. Then he smiled. He had a good, welcoming smile. "Do you work here full-time?" Yes. I'm a teacher for the 4-year-old group. Well, then we'll see you next Saturday. They left. Michael turned back in the doorway and looked at me for a long time, with that same unreadable expression. I waved to him. He didn't wave back, just watched. I thought then, poor boy, lost his mom, closed himself off. He needs time. I honestly didn't think about what would happen next. I didn't make plans, didn't fantasize. Just, poor boy. Over the next few weeks, Victor brought Michael every Saturday. We would talk in the coat room. At first for 5 minutes, then 15. Then he suggested we get a coffee while Michael was in class. Coffee from the vending machine in the hallway wasn't the most romantic option, but we both laughed about it. He had a good laugh, too quiet, genuine. He told me his story carefully, in doses. His wife, Natalie, had died a year and a half ago. The doctors could never fully explain it. Something with her organs. First the liver, then the heart. A rare condition, they said. She faded in a matter of months. His voice was steady, but I could feel the real pain behind that steadiness. The kind that has already hurt, but left a scar. Michael is taking it hard. He was very attached to his mom. A pause. He used to be much more talkative before this. I listened, sympathized, didn't pry. If a person wants to talk, they will. Victor gradually opened up, telling me he had a small construction company, that the suburban house where they lived with Natalie and Michael now felt too big, that Michael wanted a dog, but he hadn't decided yet. You probably understand kids better than I do. What would you advise? Should I get the dog? I advised him to get it. A child needs a living soul nearby. He called me 3 days later. They got a Labrador. Michael named him Donut. I laughed. He laughed too. Then a pause. And, Lily, can I take you to dinner? Just to talk. I enjoy talking to you. That's how it started. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel anything special. I did. He was exactly what I had imagined. The right word is decent. A man you want to build something real with. Attentive, unhurried, says what he thinks. Or so it seemed to me. For our first dinner, he chose a nice restaurant, not flashy or pretentious, but cozy, with wooden tables and soft music. He ordered after asking my preferences first. It's a small thing, but I notice those details. He asked, which means he listens. We talked for a long time. About children he admired my work, sincerely, not just to be polite. About Michael, how he was gradually thawing. About his company, without bragging, with the weariness of a man who works a lot. About my apartment, my parents, the fact that I love fall and hate waking up early. He laughed. A preschool teacher who doesn't like early mornings. That's honest. I'm professionally against them, I said. At home, it's a different story. He looked at me in a way that made my head spin a little. Not intrusively, just attentively. Truly attentively. We dated for 2 months. Sometimes the 3 of us would go to the park to see an animated movie. Once to a petting zoo, where Michael, for the first time since I'd known him, smiled a real smile when a rabbit took a carrot from his palm. I remembered that smile. It was like a ray of sun through thick clouds. Victor did everything right. He didn't rush, didn't pressure. He said, Lily, I understand Michael is complicated. I understand the situation isn't easy, but I want you to know I'm serious. I don't know how to be any other way. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He never gave me a reason to doubt him. When he proposed, it wasn't grand, no getting down on one knee. Just one evening, he said, Lily, marry me. I want us to be a family. I said yes, immediately, without long deliberation, because that's exactly what I had been dreaming of, a family. And because I thought, this boy needs a mother, and I know how to be a mother. That I can do. My mom, Helen, when she found out, was happy at first, then a little wary. Lily, dear, do you know him well? You haven't been dating that long. My dad, Stephen, met Victor once, shook his hand, looked at him for a long time, and later said curtly, he's all right. For my dad, that was a high recommendation. Mom calmed down. We had a modest wedding, a small restaurant, just our closest relatives. On my side, my parents and Kate. On his, 2 friends, business partners. Michael was there in a white shirt, his hair combed, quiet. He sat next to me at the table. When everyone raised a toast, he didn't even drink his soda, just held the glass. I thought, he feels awkward. It's a strange, adult party for him. At the time, I decided, it's nothing, he's just shy. He's a very withdrawn child. After losing his mom, he needs time. I know how to wait. That was my mistake. I knew how to wait, and I knew how to find logical reasons for everything. It's a teacher's quality. To find explanations for a child's behavior. Not to judge, to give them time. It's a good quality, but it also blinded me. We moved into Victor's house, a large suburban house, about 20 miles from the city. Solid, brick, with a big yard. Natalie had put the house in her name at one point, Victor explained, wincing slightly. She was a very orderly person, organized everything. After her death, the house was passed down to him. Inside, there was expensive furniture, a spacious kitchen, Michael's room with toys and books. The house was beautiful, but there was something wrong with it. I don't know how to explain it. The silence in it was just wrong, too dense. The first morning in our new home, I got up early and made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, sliced tomatoes, juice. Simple, but good. Victor praised it. Delicious, Lily. Michael sat at the table and looked at his plate. I'm not hungry, he said. At all? I asked, surprised. You haven't eaten anything yet. I don't want to eat. I didn't insist. First day, new place, stress. It happens. For lunch, I made soup with meatballs. Kids usually love soup with meatballs. I know for a fact it's always a hit at the preschool. Michael ate 2 spoonfuls and pushed the bowl away. I'm full, he said. Mikey, you barely touched it. I'm full, Aunt Lily. Victor, sitting across from me, shrugged. If he doesn't want to, don't make him. Calmly, as if it were normal. Give it time. Michael didn't touch his dinner at all, said he wasn't hungry and went to his room. I was clearing the table, thinking, maybe he's sick, maybe he's coming down with a cold. I felt his forehead normal. I asked Victor about it. He said, he's often like this. His appetite's been poor since Natalie's death. I'm used to it. The child isn't eating, and the father is used to it. Something about that answer didn't sit right with me, but I didn't latch on to it. Maybe grief really does hit people in different ways. A week passed. Michael wasn't eating. Not completely. He would sometimes eat a piece of bread, a few spoonfuls of something, occasionally accept a glass of milk, but he wasn't really eating. Breakfasts went untouched. Lunches were half-eaten. Dinners were, I'm not hungry, Lily. He dropped the aunt now, having gotten a bit more used to me, and he would leave. I talked to a colleague, Irene. She's our curriculum coordinator, has been working for 20 years, seen it all. I told her. Here's the situation. A child isn't eating. What should I do? Irene sighed. Lil, you have to understand. You're a stepmother. To him, you're the person who took his mom's place. He can't accept you, and he's showing it through food. It's a protest. Not with words, but with actions. Give it time. I nodded, thinking, she's probably right. It's probably just a protest. But something didn't add up. Protest through food. I'd seen that before. Kids get fussy, demand their way, throw tantrums. Michael wasn't being fussy. He didn't demand anything, didn't whine, didn't say, I want this or I don't want that. He just quietly and steadily refused, like someone who has made a decision. Not a hysterical childhood decision, but a considered, firm, adult one. At 6 years old, children don't make decisions like that, or very rarely. In the mornings, I drove him to preschool. Victor left for work earlier, so Michael and I would have a few minutes alone in the car. He would look out the window. Sometimes I'd turn on the radio. Sometimes we'd talk about the weather, about Donut, about what they'd be sculpting or drawing at preschool that day. He answered in short phrases, but he did answer. That was something. One day on the way, he suddenly said, Lily, do you know how to make meatballs? I was surprised. He initiated the conversation. It was a real first. I do. Do you like meatballs? Mom used to make them. Hers were small and round, not like the ones at school. Tell me about them. He was quiet for a moment, then said seriously, with onions. But you couldn't see the onions. She chopped them up really, really small. I can do that. Want to make them this weekend? A long pause. We were already pulling up to the preschool. Maybe, he said. That was good enough. That weekend, I made meatballs. I finely chopped the onion, mixed it with the ground beef, and formed small, round patties. Victor was home, working in his office. Michael hovered nearby, watching, not helping, just watching. I let him watch, didn't invite him to participate. Let him decide for himself. The meatballs turned out well. I put 3 on his plate. Michael sat down at the table, picked up his fork, cut off a piece, chewed slowly, looking at his plate. Then he said, "They're like Mom's." I stayed silent, just smiled. He ate 1 meatball. 1, not 3. But it was a real, honest meal. I didn't celebrate out loud, just cleared the table calmly, as if it was perfectly normal. Inside, though, I was so relieved my hands were almost shaking. But the next day, he wasn't eating again. Not even the meatballs. I made oatmeal with butter. Good, warm oatmeal. Michael looked at the bowl and said, "I'm not hungry." He got up and left. I sat there over that oatmeal and wondered what had changed. Yesterday, meatballs a small step forward. Today, a wall again. What was the difference? I couldn't find the difference then. I thought it was about his mood, about childish inconsistency. All of it was explainable. It all fit within the framework of the psychology of loss. I needed to look at it differently. Not at him, but at the situation around him. But I didn't know how to look differently yet. I looked at a child and saw a child. I needed to look wider. I went through the options. Maybe he doesn't like my cooking. I started making simpler things. Things kids are guaranteed to like. Mac and cheese. Michael, you like mac and cheese? Just a little? He ate 3 forkfuls. Homemade chicken nuggets. He ate 1. An omelet. A couple of bites. Pancakes with jam. He perked up a little at that, ate almost 2 pancakes, and I was so happy I almost clapped my hands. But it was a one-time thing. The next day, it was, I'm not hungry again. No fussiness, no tantrums, no demands. I want this, I don't want that. Just a quiet, polite, absolutely firm no. I've worked with children for 7 years. I've seen it all. Picky eaters, food protests, psychosomatic issues. But I'd never seen this. This was something else, something I couldn't name. One evening, in the 3rd week of our life together, I went into Michael's room. He was lying on his bed reading a book about dinosaurs. Big pictures. A little text. Donut was asleep at his feet, already huge despite his age, a yellow lab. "Mikey," I said, "can I come in?" "Yeah," he said, not looking up from his book. I sat on the edge of the bed. Donut lifted his head, looked at me, and dropped his nose back on his paws. "I wanted to ask," I began, "have you always eaten so little, or is this just recently?" Michael lowered his book, looked at me with that same look of his, mature beyond his years. "Just not hungry," he said. "Michael, you know it's important to eat, to grow, and be strong." "I know." "Then why?" He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Lily, do you like dinosaurs?" I understood the conversation was over. He had changed the subject, carefully but clearly. A 6-year-old had closed the door to a conversation so skillfully that I didn't even notice at first. "I do," I said, "especially Triceratops." "Why Triceratops? It has 3 horns. 3 is a good number." Michael thought about it and nodded, as if agreeing with the argument. I left his room and stood in the hallway, leaning my back against the wall, just standing there, gathering my thoughts. There was something about this child that didn't respond to the usual tools. I know how to find common ground with children. This isn't boasting. It's just a fact of my professional life. In 7 years, there hadn't been a single child with whom I couldn't make at least an inch of progress. But here, there was a wall, a soft, polite, insurmountable wall. That night, I lay next to a sleeping Victor and thought. He slept soundly, breathing deeply. Handsome in the dark, a calm face, relaxed shoulders. I looked at him and thought, why isn't he worried? His child hasn't eaten for 3 weeks, and his father says, I'm used to it. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's normal for men not to notice these things. Victor works a lot, gets tired. He probably thinks that as long as there's no fever, everything is fine. I got up quietly so as not to wake him. I went to the kitchen, poured myself some water, and went to the window. It was dark outside, not a single light. The suburbs at night. Michael's dinner plate was on the counter. I had forgotten to put it away. An untouched meatball, potatoes, a cucumber slice. I stared at that plate for a long time and thought, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change? How do I get through to this boy? I didn't understand yet. Back then, I didn't need to change anything. I needed to understand his situation, not just him. But that came later, not right away. For now, I just stood by the window, looked into the darkness, and thought that being a good stepmother is a profession, just like being a teacher, only without the guidebooks. That I needed to be patient, that Michael would get used to me over time, open up, begin to trust. I believed in that. I truly believed. Behind me, a floorboard creaked softly. I turned around. No one. Just an old house, old floorboards. I put Michael's plate in the refrigerator in case he got hungry during the night and went to bed. None of us slept well in that house. I felt it, though for a long time I couldn't explain why. I would just wake up in the morning feeling unrested, as if something was disturbing me, something quiet, unseen, constant. Later, I understood what, but that was later. The teacher from Michael's preschool called me during the 3rd week. Mrs. Davis, an older woman, strict-looking but kind. I know how to read faces like hers. Lily, she said, you're Michael Hayes' stepmother now. Is that correct? Yes, we just got married. I wanted to let you know, the boy has started eating poorly at school. Before, everything was fine. He wasn't a gourmet eater, but he ate. Now, he just picks at his food. He barely touches his lunch. The teacher's aide tries to encourage him, but he just turns away. I felt a chill, even though the room was warm. Does he say anything? Why he's not eating? He's silent. You know how quiet he is. He just sits and stares at his plate while everyone else eats, then puts it away. This was what truly alarmed me. At school, I'm not there. Victor isn't there. It's a different kitchen, different food, no connection to home. If he's refusing food there too, then it's not about me. It's something inside him. I made an appointment for Michael with a pediatrician. The doctor, a young woman with a tired face and very attentive eyes, examined him, weighed him, measured him. His weight is slightly below normal for his age and height, she told me while Michael was getting dressed in the corner. Not critical yet, but the trend is not good. If it continues, we'll have to investigate further. What could be the cause? Stress, the loss of a loved one, a change in environment. At this age, children react very sensitively to changes, often through their eating habits. She looked at Michael. Young man, do you like to eat? Michael thought, then said, when it's not scary. The doctor nodded, wrote something down. I stood there thinking, when it's not scary? What is he afraid of? What? Food? Me? His father? His new life? On the way back in the car, I asked, Mikey, what are you afraid of? He was looking out the window. Nothing in particular, he said. That nothing in particular sounded so adult that it took my breath away. That's what people say when they're afraid of a great many things but don't want to admit it. That night, I went to the kitchen again, stood by the window, looking at the dark yard. Donut was sleeping in the entryway, snoring softly. A pipe groaned somewhere in the house. On the counter was Michael's untouched dinner plate. I looked at it and thought, what am I doing wrong? This question haunted me every day. What am I doing wrong? I didn't know yet that I was doing everything right. That my attentiveness, my concern, my readiness to listen this was exactly what would save us both. Later, for now, I didn't know that. For now, I just stood by the window in the dark and thought, what am I doing wrong? A month had passed since the wedding. I had settled into the house a little, knew where the light switches were, where the 3rd stair creaked, how to open the stiff latch on the bathroom window. I was starting to feel the house. I didn't feel Michael. He remained closed to me, like that same latch. No matter how much you pull, it won't give. I kept trying, not with desperation, but methodically, like a teacher who knows that with children, you need time and consistency. I bought a children's cookbook, Bright, with pictures. I found recipes that kids usually like: pancakes for breakfast, homemade thin crust pizza, baked chicken bites, pumpkin soup with croutons. The result was always the same. Michael would sit down, look at the plate, sometimes try 1 or 2 bites. Then, "I'm not hungry, Lily." I noticed one thing that worried me. He would take fruit himself. An apple from the bowl, a clementine, a pear. Bread, he might take a slice straight from the cutting board, not cut, just take it and eat it. He would give donut pieces of cheese broken off from the main block and chew some himself at the same time. But all of this was food that was out in the open, that hadn't been prepared by anyone, not arranged on plates, just lying there, accessible. For a long time, I didn't think much of it. I thought, well, at least he's eating something. Fruit is healthy. The main thing is, he's not starving completely. Only later did I understand the difference. Towards the end of the first month, Victor began to change. Imperceptibly, like the weather changes in late fall. It seems like the same sky, the same trees, but it's colder, darker. There's something different in the air. At first, he was the same attentive, calm, saying the right things. But gradually, something new appeared. Small, almost elusive, and for that very reason, alarming. One evening at dinner, he said, "Lily, don't you think you're cooking things that are too complicated for a child?" I was surprised. I had made fish cakes with potatoes. It wasn't complicated. It was normal home-cooked food. "What do you mean, complicated?" Natalie always cooked more simply. Michael is used to something different. Maybe that's why he's not eating. I stayed silent. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to start an argument over fish cakes. I thought, fine, I'll try even simpler. I tried. It had no effect. Michael ate neither the complicated nor the simple food. Victor didn't bring it up again. But the next time he said something else, also small, also almost random. "Lily, aren't you pressuring him too much about food?" "Maybe it's better to just ignore it," I objected. "He's losing weight. This isn't something to ignore." Victor shrugged. "The doctor said it's not critical, yet." He always found an explanation. Gentle, reasonable, the kind you couldn't argue with. I was angry inside, not out loud. Inside, I was thinking, "You're his father. Why don't you care?" But I didn't know then that he cared very much. His interests were just different. In the middle of the second month, I found out I was pregnant. It happened in the morning. Victor had left. Michael was at preschool. I was alone. I had bought the test the day before, almost on autopilot. My period was a little late. I could have ignored it, but something inside wouldn't let me rest. I got up, took the test, set it on the edge of the sink, went to put the kettle on, and came back 3 minutes later. 2 lines. I stared at them for a long time, then sat down on the edge of the bathtub. Not because my legs wouldn't hold me, but because I just needed to stop. 2 months of marriage, a house in the suburbs, a stepson who doesn't eat, and now a pregnancy. The first thing I felt was joy. Real, unadulterated. I had always wanted children. It was my dream, not a secret one, just a simple, ordinary one. My own child. I was going to be a mother. The second thing I felt was fear. A quiet, background fear. I couldn't explain where it came from. I just felt that something had changed, and not just for the better. I told Victor that evening. He smiled, hugged me, said the right words. "I'm so happy. This is wonderful. Now we'll be a real family." I looked at him over his shoulder as he hugged me and thought, why are his eyes so calm? Too calm. No excitement, no flustered happiness. Just steady, controlled. As if he already knew, or as if it didn't matter to him in the way it matters to a normal person. I pushed the thought away. People are different. Not everyone expresses emotions the same way. It doesn't mean anything bad. About a week after I found out I was pregnant, Victor brought up my apartment. "Lily," he said one evening, as we were sitting alone in the living room, "have you thought about updating the paperwork for your apartment? You know, legally, just to get everything in order. We're a family now. We'll have a child." "What do you mean, update the paperwork?" I asked. "Well, right now the apartment is completely in your name. It's your property, but we're married, we're having a child together. It's logical for the documents to reflect that. Joint property, that's the right way, the family way." I didn't answer right away. Something inside me became wary. I couldn't understand why, just some internal stop signal. "I'll think about it," I said. "Of course, no rush," he said, and smiled. I thought, he's probably right. We're a family, joint property is normal. But something prevented me from agreeing immediately. I put it off, mentally pressed pause. I'll come back to it later, not now. It was then that something happened that I would think about for a very long time afterward. It was a normal evening. Michael was already asleep. He always falls asleep early, after 8. Donut was dozing by the radiator. Victor was working in his office. I was drinking tea in the kitchen, scrolling through something on my phone. Then I got up to fill the kettle. I walked over to the stove, picked up the kettle, turned toward the sink, and in that moment, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. Victor was standing at the counter. He had come out so quietly I hadn't heard him. And he was doing something with my mug. His back was to me, blocking my view. A quick, precise movement, something into the mug. "What are you doing?" I asked. He turned around immediately, perfectly calm. "Putting sugar in for you. You like it sweet, right?" The mug was sitting in front of me. The tea looked normal, amber-colored, nothing special. "I put my own sugar in," I said. "I know how much I need." "Oh, sorry. I was just trying to do something nice." He smiled and left. I looked at the mug, then picked it up and drank it. Tea was tea, a little sweeter than I like, but still tea. That evening, I felt an intense sleepiness, an unusual fatigue, something heavy that came over me all at once. I barely made it to bed and fell asleep instantly. I don't even remember how. In the morning, I woke up with my head feeling like cotton. I decided I was just overtired. Pregnancy, worries, a new house, a new life. All of it together, it just hit me. But a residue remained. A residue. Not a thought, not a suspicion, just a feeling. Something was off. Something about that scene, his back, the quick movement, putting sugar in was off. I couldn't formulate it, couldn't even explain it to myself properly. Just off. I started to observe. Not intentionally, I just stopped pushing my attention away when it reacted to something. I started allowing myself to notice. And I noticed this. Michael's relationship with food was completely different when Victor wasn't home. Victor sometimes worked late, coming home after 9, sometimes closer to 10. On those evenings, Michael would eat. Not a lot, but he would eat. He might take an apple and ask for a piece of bread and butter. He might drink some milk with cookies from the package. Small things, but real. No refusals, no I'm not hungry. When Victor was home, no. Almost always no. I tried to find another explanation. Maybe when his dad is home, Michael gets anxious. The father's presence creates psychological tension. Perhaps the child senses the relationship between the adults, even if everything seems calm on the surface. Maybe he senses his father is unhappy with me, and it affects his appetite. All of this was logical. It all fit within the framework. But then I noticed something else. Michael would watch my plate when I was eating. He would stare intently, with an expression that 6-year-old children don't usually have. Not just childish curiosity, something else. Something like anticipation. Or fear. I caught this look several times. I would always turn away, pretending not to notice. I didn't want to scare him, didn't want him to close up again. One evening, Victor brought me tea himself, without me asking. He set it on the table in front of me. "Drink this. You're tired." I said thank you, picked up the mug. And at that moment, Michael, who was sitting in the corner with a book, said quietly, "Lily, don't drink it." I froze. Victor froze too, for a split second, then laughed. "Mikey, what's gotten into you?" Michael stared stubbornly at the page in his book. Nothing, he said. I just don't want her to drink it. Why? I asked. He didn't answer, just turned the page. He looked so withdrawn, so lost in his own world, that I didn't insist. Victor said, Don't pay him any mind. He says strange things sometimes. I looked at the mug, then set it back on the table. You know, I think I'll wait. My head is kind of hurting. I stood up and went to my room. I don't know what exactly stopped me then. It wasn't logic. I had no logical explanation. It was just that Michael said, Don't drink it. And something inside me answered, Don't drink it. I didn't sleep for a long time that night. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Beside me, Victor breathed evenly. Donut paced outside the door, then lay down. I thought about the white powder, about what I had seen out of the corner of my eye. I thought about the mug, about the sleepiness after that evening's tea. I thought about Michael's gaze, the way he looked at my plate, at my mug, with that anticipation, with that fear. I thought, what does he know? A 6-year-old boy who barely eats, who says, Don't drink it, who looks at me with an expression I can't name. What does he know? I didn't let myself think any further, not yet. It was too much, too scary, too impossible. I just got married, I'm pregnant. My husband is a normal person, a successful person. I chose him myself. I didn't allow it, but the question remained. What does he know? I lay in the dark, listening to Victor's breathing, and thought, am I going crazy, or the opposite? Outside, it was night. The house was quiet. Just Donut, sighing occasionally, and me, with a mug of untouched tea on the table, on the other side of the bedroom, far away. As if it weren't just a mug, but something important that I hadn't yet dared to examine. In the morning, while Victor was in the shower, I walked past Michael's room. The door was ajar. He was getting dressed. Awkwardly, the button wouldn't go into the hole right away. I stopped, wanting to help. He lifted his head, looked at me for a long time with that same adult gaze of his. Lily, he said quietly, you didn't drink the tea yesterday? No, I said. My head was hurting. He nodded, then said, so quiet it was almost a whisper. Good. And he turned back to his buttons. I stood in the doorway. My heart was beating fast, faster than it should have. That short word, good, wasn't just a child's good. There was something else in it, something like relief. A 6-year-old boy sighed with relief that I hadn't drunk the tea. I went downstairs to the kitchen, put the kettle on. My hands were steady. I forced them to be steady. Inside, though, no. Inside there was something sharp, unpleasant, like the beginning of an understanding. Just the beginning. I was still far from understanding, but the first brick had shifted. The next few days, I lived in a strange, dual state. On the outside, everything was as usual. I cooked, cleaned, took Michael to preschool, talked to Victor over dinner, answered my mom's calls. Inside, I was quietly observing, noticing, putting the pieces together. The white powder, my mug, the sleepiness, Michael's gaze. Don't drink it. Good. I started avoiding hot drinks that Victor prepared, subtly, carefully. I don't really feel like tea. I'll get it myself, don't worry. The smell of coffee makes me nauseous. Pregnancy, nothing to be done. Pregnancy gave me cover. I could refuse anything, and it looked natural. Victor didn't react, accepted my explanations calmly, without questions. That in itself was noticeable. A normal person, worried about his pregnant wife, would ask questions. What don't you like? What are you craving? How are you feeling? Victor didn't ask. He just nodded. I understood later. He didn't ask because he wasn't interested in my well-being. He was interested in something else. I called my mom a few times, just to talk. I didn't tell her anything specific, just wanted to hear her voice. She would talk about the neighbor, about Dad's blood pressure, about how they needed to make jam in the fall, normal, warm conversations. After those calls, I would feel a little better, as if someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. I didn't tell her anything. I didn't know what to say yet. Didn't understand it myself. My morning sickness started around the same time. It was mild, no severe bouts, but noticeable. a heaviness in the mornings, an unpleasant taste, fatigue that came in waves during the day. I attributed part of my condition to the pregnancy and was glad for the excuse. It allowed me to seem normal while explaining abnormal behavior. Michael started to get a little closer, by the smallest of steps. One evening, when Victor was working late, we were sitting together watching cartoons. Donut was lying on the couch between us. Michael was eating an apple, which he had taken himself, without me offering. He chewed quietly, watching the screen. Then suddenly he said, "Lily, are you lonely?" I was taken aback. "Why do you ask? You look out the window for a long time sometimes." "Mom used to do that too." It took me a moment to find an answer. Then I said, "Sometimes, I'm just thinking about different things. What do you think about? About you, about the future?" He thought about it, took another bite of his apple. "Is the future good sometimes?" he asked. "It can be very good. How do you know?" "I've seen a good future with my own eyes, for different people." He nodded seriously, taking note. Then he went back to staring at the screen. The cartoon was about some adventure, something loud and bright. Michael was watching, but I could feel he was thinking about something else. Before bed, he let me read to him out loud. For the first time. Before, he always read by himself or refused. I'm a big boy now. I read about the three bears. It was funny, almost silly, for a 6-year-old. But he didn't object, just lay there, looking at the ceiling, listening. When I closed the book, he said, "Lily, you won't leave, will you?" "Leave where?" "Nowhere. Just, you won't leave." I looked at him, at that small, pale face in the dark, at the blue eyes that weren't childish at all. "I won't leave," I said. "I'm here." He closed his eyes and fell asleep quickly. I sat beside him for a few more minutes, watching him, and I realized with a clarity that sometimes comes in darkness and silence, that I loved this child. Not because I was supposed to, not because I had married his father. I just loved him, the way you love children who need you and whom you need. And then I thought, he's afraid I'll leave. Why? Because the adults in his life leave. His mom died, left. He's afraid of losing someone again. Or is he afraid that what happened to his mom will happen to him? Or is he afraid that it will happen to me? I didn't let the thought finish. I got up quietly and left the room. A few days before his business trip, Victor brought up the apartment again. This time, more specifically. "Lily, I spoke with our lawyer. He says it's easier to set up the joint ownership before the baby is born. Afterward, it's more complicated, different procedures. We should go to the notary while we have time." I looked at him. Calm face, steady voice, nothing out of place. "Victor," I said, "I'm not ready to make decisions like that right now. I'm pregnant. I have morning sickness. I'm not thinking clearly. Let's revisit this after the baby is born." A quiet pause. Something in his eyes, quick, almost imperceptible. Not anger, something colder. "Of course," he said, "whatever you say." And he smiled. I remembered that smile. It was correct. The lips were in the right position, the corners turned up, but it didn't reach his eyes. The muscles just did what they were supposed to do in that situation. 2 days later, he left on his business trip. 3 days in Chicago. Business meetings. He told me the night before, while packing his suitcase. "Lily, can you handle Michael?" "Of course. If anything, call." "Okay." He left early in the morning. I didn't even hear him. I woke up, and he was already gone. Michael was sitting at the table, eating an apple. Donut was circling nearby. "Did Dad leave?" Michael asked. "Yes, on a business trip. He'll be back in 3 days." Michael nodded, took another apple. And I saw it absolutely clearly. His shoulders dropped slightly, relaxed, as if he had exhaled something he had been holding inside. That day for lunch, I made pasta with homemade sauce and grated cheese. Simple, quick. I put the plate in front of Michael. He picked up his fork and started to eat. Really, eat. Not 2 spoonfuls, but the whole plate. Slowly, neatly, but the whole plate. I sat across from him, and almost started to cry. I was smiling and on the verge of tears at the same time. "Is it good?" I asked when he was finished. "Yes," he said. "You cook well, Lily. Then why didn't you eat before?" A pause. "I don't know," he said. I didn't feel like it. I didn't press him. I already knew that when Michael closed up, it was useless to push. I just cleared the plates and put the kettle on. The next day, we went to the park. It was already cold, the end of October, the leaves wet on the ground. But we took Donut and went. Michael ran after the dog, laughing a real, clear laugh. I walked behind him and thought, this is how he's supposed to be. This is the real Michael. We bought hot chocolate from a stand near the park entrance. Michael held the cup with both hands, warming his palms, drinking in small sips, wrinkling his nose. "It's so sweet, but it's good." Donut sat next to him, staring at the cup with such longing that Michael laughed again. "He can't have chocolate," he said sternly. "You're right, he can't." Mom said so. She read about dogs in a book. He said it calmly, without drama, just as a fact. Mom read. Mom said, Mom loved dogs. "Tell me about your mom," I said, "if you want to." He was quiet for a moment. Then, she was warm. When she hugged you, it was warm. She sang songs, not very well, but I liked it. And she made apple pie. The kitchen always smelled so good because of it. She was a good mom. "Very," Michael said. "The best." I took his hand. He didn't pull away. We walked on down the path. Donut ran ahead. That evening, as I was tucking him into bed, he asked me to read to him again. I read something about animals in the forest. He listened, then said, "Lily, I want to tell you something. Tell me. Tomorrow." A pause. "Not now. Tomorrow." "Okay," I said calmly. "I'm not in any rush." He nodded, closed his eyes. I turned off the light and left. I closed the door and stopped in the hallway. "I want to tell you something." Those were different words. Not a child's, "Guess what I did at school?" Not, "I want a dog" or "Can I watch a cartoon?" This was something else. I could feel it. I barely slept that night. I lay there and listened to the silence of the house. The wind somewhere, Donut turning over on his side, and behind the wall, a little boy sleeping, who wanted to tell me something. I finally dozed off towards morning. I dreamed something vague. The kitchen, a lit stove, a mug on the edge of the counter. I was reaching for it and couldn't get to it. I woke up because Donut was barking in the entryway, at the mailman or a cat in the yard. He always barked at those two. I got up, looked out the window. A gray morning, frost on the grass. October was on its last legs. Michael was already in the kitchen, sitting, eating bread and butter. He had gotten it himself, buttered it himself. He looked at me when I came in. "Good morning," he said. "Morning. How are you?" "Okay." I put the kettle on, sliced an apple. Michael took a slice, without me offering, just took it. We were silent, but the silence was different than before. Not deaf, not tense, just quiet. The way it can be when two people are sitting together and don't need to explain anything. "I want to tell you something." I looked at him across the table and thought, "Say it. I'm ready to listen." "Speak when you're ready." "Today, in a week, in a month, I'll wait. I know how to wait." I waited all the next day. I didn't show it, just waited. Michael and I lived our normal life. Breakfast, preschool. Then I went to the store, bought groceries, came home, made lunch. Michael came home from preschool, pink from the cold, kicked off his boots in the entryway, and threw himself at Donut, who was already wagging by the door. They wrestled in the hallway. Donut licked his nose. Michael pushed him away, laughing. Then he came into the kitchen, sat down. "Want some soup?" I asked. "Yes." He ate almost all of it, asked for bread, ate the bread too. After lunch, he did his homework from school, some tracing worksheets, a few letters. He sat over his notebook seriously, the tip of his tongue sticking out with concentration. I glanced at him and thought, this is him, the real him. This is what he's like when he's not afraid. Afraid. The word appeared again on its own. What is a 6-year-old boy afraid of in his own home? I washed the dishes, wiped the counter, rearranged jars in the cabinet, and thought, trying to find an explanation that wasn't scary. Psychological trauma, grief, stress. All of that was true. All of it was there. But don't drink it, that's not about psychological trauma. That's about something specific. Something he saw. In the evening, we watched cartoons again. Donut slept with his paws in the air. Michael was eating a clementine, peeling the segments carefully, one by one. Then he offered me one. Want some? I do, thank you. We ate the clementine together and watched the screen. Then I said, without looking at him, "You said you wanted to tell me something. I remember. I'm not rushing you. I'm just here, if you want to." He didn't answer right away. Chewed, watched the screen. "I'll tell you," he said finally. "Later." "Okay," I said. "When you're ready." I went to tuck him in at 8:30. He got into bed. I covered him with the blanket. I read a little. He asked for it himself. Then I closed the book, turned off the light, stood up. "Sleep well, Mikey." "Lily?" "Yeah? Can you not leave right away?" "Sit for a little bit." I sat down on the edge of the bed again. In the darkness, you could hear the wind touching the bare branches outside. Donut settled by the door, breathing softly. Michael was quiet. I thought he was falling asleep. Then he said, "Lily, have you ever been really scared?" "I have." "And what did you do?" I thought honestly. I told myself, being scared is normal. Being scared means something important is happening. Then I did what I had to do, even if I was scared. What if you're really, really scared? Then it's even more important. Because if you're really scared and you do it anyway, that's called courage. A long silence. "Mom said the same thing," he said. "Almost the same thing." I didn't answer, just sat beside him. Probably 10 minutes passed. I was sure he was asleep. I started to get up carefully, so as not to wake him. And then he said, "Lily, I need to tell you something. Right now." His voice was quiet but firm, not at all sleepy. "I'm listening, Michael," I said, and sat back down. He was quiet for another moment, then began, steadily, without inflection, as if he were reciting something he had memorized, or something he had held inside for a very long time and was now releasing carefully, one word at a time. "My mom stopped eating too. At first, she ate, but then Dad started putting a white powder in her food." I didn't move. He said it was vitamins for her health, but after that, Mom always slept. She slept for a very long time, and she cried sometimes, when she thought I couldn't see. And then one day, she didn't wake up. Silence. I saw him put the powder in. Once in her soup, once in her tea. I was little. I didn't understand at first. I thought it was really vitamins. Then Mom died, and I understood. I sat there, not breathing. "I don't eat your food," he continued in the same steady voice, "because I'm scared. What if Dad put the powder in when you weren't looking? I didn't want you to die like Mom." A very short pause. "When Dad isn't home, it's not scary. Then I eat." I couldn't speak. I sat in the dark, looking at that small, pale silhouette under the blanket, and I couldn't speak. He added, very quietly, Mom told me, before she got really sick, "Mikey, if something happens, tell someone good." I didn't know who was good for a long time. And then you came, and I knew. You're good. That's why I'm telling you. I hugged him. He didn't pull away. He lay quietly in my arms, small and weightless, as if something inside him had unwound, something that had been clenched for a long time. "Don't cry," he said. I didn't know I was crying until he said it. "I'm sorry," I breathed out. "Don't be." A pause. "I just wanted you to know." I held him and thought, disjointedly, in fragments. White powder. Natalie, who faded in a few months. A rare condition. The doctors didn't understand. The mug of tea. My sleepiness. The questions about the apartment. We should update the documents. Pregnancy. It all lined up. Silently, terrifyingly, irrefutably. I was responsible for more than just myself now. Mikey, I said quietly, when I could speak, you are so brave. What you just told me is a very brave thing to do. He asked. Everything is going to be okay now, I said. I promise. It was a big promise. I didn't know then if I could keep it, but I said it firmly, without hesitation, because it was exactly what he needed to hear. Do you really promise? I do. He was quiet again. 6 years old. A 6-year-old boy had carried this for over a year, alone, without words, without an adult nearby, only with this knowledge that was too heavy for his age. And he found a way to protect me, the only way he could. By not eating the food that could be poisoned, by saying, don't drink it, by staying close, alone. I thought about Natalie, about how she was fading and realizing something, and was afraid, and maybe wrote something, and told Michael, tell someone good. A dying woman was giving her son a mission. The last thing she could. I thought about myself, pregnant, in a stranger's house with a husband I didn't know, whom it turned out I didn't know at all. I thought about what I had to do. The answer was clear, without alternatives. I found my phone, dialed my mom. It was late, almost 11. She was probably asleep. She picked up on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. Lily, is everything okay? Mom, I said in a whisper, so as not to wake Michael. I need to tell you something. I'm listening. Not now. Tomorrow. Can you come tomorrow? I'll be on the first bus, she said, without questions. I'll be there by 10. This is why I love my mom. She doesn't ask why, what happened, why the urgency. Just, I'll be there by 10. Thank you, I said. Lily, my mom's voice was slightly different, more serious. Are you okay right now? For now, yes. I'll tell you tomorrow. Okay, I'll come. I put the phone down, looked at the sleeping Michael. Then I got up quietly, went out into the hallway, closed the door. I went to the living room, sat in the armchair. Donut followed me, sensed something, and settled at my feet. I put my hand down, scratched behind his ear. He sighed. A long, almost human sigh. I thought, clearly and coldly, I wasn't panicking. That surprised me. I expected panic, tears, confusion. Instead, there was a cold clarity, as if something that had been building for a long time had finally burst, and now I could look at it directly. Victor would be back the day after tomorrow, in the evening. I had almost 2 days. I would see my mom in the morning. I would tell her everything. Then I needed to think about what to do next. The police. How does that work? What do I say? What do they need? I didn't know the procedures. I didn't know anything about that world, but I could find out. Michael, what would happen to him while all this was going on? He needed to be protected from his father. While Victor was gone, he was safe. Then, I needed to make sure he stayed safe. I thought about the child I was carrying. The child was not at fault for anything. This child would be born, no matter what happened. Then I thought about the mug of tea, the one I didn't drink. About the sleepiness after that evening when I did drink it. The child. I was already pregnant then. What was in that tea? A chill ran down my spine. Not fear, something else. Rage, probably. A quiet, controlled rage. I got up, went to the kitchen, opened the cabinet above the stove where Victor kept his things, some tools, batteries, odds and ends. I looked. Nothing suspicious. I went to his office. It was locked. Victor always locked his office. Work documents, business information. I never objected. Why would I need his work documents? Now, the locked office door looked different. I didn't try to break the lock. Not because I was afraid, but because I understood I shouldn't. Not me. There are people with the authority for that. I went back to the living room, sat in the armchair again. Donut settled beside me again. Outside, it was dark and quiet. The suburbs, not a light around, just the wind. I sat and thought about Michael, about how he had carried this burden for a year, how he had devised his own way to protect me. A small, imperfect way, but real. How he had waited until his father was out of the house and then told me. His mother told him, "Tell someone good. He chose me." That trust weighed more than anything else. I sat in the dark, my hand on my belly, lightly, barely touching, and thought, we'll get through this. I didn't know how yet, but we would. I know how to do what needs to be done, even when I'm scared. I had said it myself. That's called courage. Towards morning, I finally dozed off, right there in the armchair. Donut snored at my feet. Outside, a gray, cold October morning was dawning. When I woke up, Michael was already standing in the doorway, looking at me. "Did you sleep here?" he asked. I dozed off for a bit. "Not in bed?" "It just happened." He came over, stood next to the armchair, then awkwardly, childishly, patted my shoulder. "Just once, briefly." "You weren't scared, were you?" he asked. "By what I told you." "I was scared," I said honestly. "But that's okay. Remember what I said about courage?" He nodded. "I remember. Well, we'll both get through this." He nodded again. Seriously, as if signing an agreement. "I'm hungry," he said. "Can I have scrambled eggs?" "You can have anything you want," I said, and stood up. We went to the kitchen. I made scrambled eggs. He sat on a chair, swinging his legs, completely like a child. Finally, like a child. Donuts circled underfoot, hoping for a scrap. A normal morning. Almost normal, except for what I knew. Now I knew for sure that after this morning, nothing would ever be the same. And that was right. Mom called at a little after 9. "Lily, I'm on my way. I'll be a little early." I answered, "Okay, I'm waiting." I hung up. I looked at Michael. He was finishing his eggs, carefully scraping up the last bits with his fork. "Mikey," I said, "my mom is coming over. My mom, Helen, she's nice. Don't be afraid of her." "I'm not afraid," he said. "Is your mom a good mom?" "A very good one, like mine was," he said simply. "Yes," I said, "like yours was." He nodded and finished his milk. That was it. I was ready. Mom arrived at 10:15. She rang the doorbell. I opened it. She was standing on the doorstep in her brown coat, a bag over her shoulder. Her face was worried, but calm. The kind of face a person has who knows not to get scared before it's time. She came in, took off her shoes, looked around. Michael peeked out from the living room, looked at her. She looked at him. "You must be Michael," she said. "Yes, I'm Helen, Lily's mom." A pause. "Do you like apple pie?" Michael seemed surprised. Didn't seem to expect a question like that. "I don't know. I haven't tried it." "Well, we'll have to fix that." She turned to me. "Lily, let's go talk. And Michael, can you keep the dog company?" Donut was already pacing next to Michael. Michael nodded. Mom and I went to the kitchen. I closed the door, sat down. She sat across from me, without taking off her coat, folded her hands on the table, and looked at me. "Tell me." I told her everything, slowly, in order, from the very beginning. About the powder in the mug, the sleepiness, Michael's, "Don't drink it," what he told me that night, about Natalie, about the office that was always locked, about the conversations about transferring the apartment. Mom listened without interrupting. Her face became more and more closed off. That's what happens when a person is holding back a strong reaction. When I finished, she was silent for about 30 seconds, then said, "Did you call the police?" "No. I wanted to talk to you first." "Good." She stood up, slowly, unbuttoned her coat, hung it on the back of the chair. "We'll call now, together." "Mom, I don't know what to say. I have no proof, only Michael's words." "A child's words are grounds for an investigation," she said, calmly as a fact. "And what you saw with the mug, too. You'll tell the detective. It's their job to figure it out." She came over, took my hand firmly, with both of hers. "Lily, you did the right thing by calling me. Now listen to me. You're pregnant, Michael is with you. That man is coming back the day after tomorrow. We can't wait." "I know. Then call." I called. My voice was steady. I made sure of it. I explained to the dispatcher. "My stepson wants to give testimony about the death of his mother. I suspect she did not die of natural causes, that my husband was involved." The dispatcher transferred me to a detective on duty. He asked a few questions, short, sharp, and said, "Wait there, Someone is on their way. They arrived in 40 minutes. Two of them. Detective Miller, an older, solid man with the tired face of someone who had seen a lot. And Officer Chen, a young woman with attentive eyes. Chen immediately asked, "Is the boy here? Can we talk to him?" I called Michael. He came out of the living room, donut at his heels. He looked at the two strangers, not scared, just assessing. Chen knelt down to be at his level. "Hi, I'm Anna. Are you Michael?" "Yes. Michael, your mom." She hesitated for a second, corrected herself. "Lily said you wanted to tell us something. Will you tell me?" Michael looked at her for a long time, then looked at me. I nodded. "I'll tell you," he said. They talked in the living room, Chen and Michael. Mom was present as the child's legal representative. Miller stayed with me in the kitchen, taking my statement. I told him everything in detail about the mug, the sleepiness, the conversations about the apartment. He listened, wrote, sometimes asked for clarification. I couldn't hear anything from the living room. The door was closed. "Just once," Michael's voice, calm, steady, explaining something. Miller finished writing, put down his pen. "Lily," he said, "you said your husband returns the day after tomorrow?" "Yes, in the evening." "Okay, we're going to need to search the office today." "The door is locked?" "Yes, he has the key. We'll open the lock, with your permission." "Are you the owner of the property?" "No. The house is in his name, but I have the right to consent to a search as a resident family member." "You'll process it properly, I assume." Miller looked at me with slight surprise. "We will. We need a warrant." "We'll get one." A pause. "Are you a lawyer?" "A preschool teacher," I said. "I just read." He nodded, without smiling, but with something like respect. While they were getting the warrant, it took time, calls, approvals. Mom took Michael. They went to his room. I could hear their voices from there. Mom's, calm, and Michael's, telling her something. Donut lay down by the door. I sat in the kitchen and looked out the window. The sky was gray, flat, no breaks. October. When they got the warrant, Miller called to confirm. They opened the office lock quickly. I stood in the hallway, watching as Miller went inside. Chen came back from the bedroom. "Michael is a very clear witness," she said to me in a low voice. "Exceptionally so for his age. The details match. The place, the time, the description of the powder, the vials in the cabinet." A pause. "You did the right thing by calling." "He's the one who did the right thing," I said. I just listened. Miller came out of the office about 20 minutes later. His face was unreadable, but something about him had changed. "Lily," he said, "could you come with me? There's something in here you need to see." The office smelled of paper and something metallic. A desk, a computer, cabinets, a drawer in the desk was open. Miller pointed with his hand, without touching. In here, in the drawer was a small tin box, open. Inside were several small baggies with a white powder, tightly sealed, and a vial with no label. I stared at them. White powder in small baggies. "Is this what the boy described?" Miller asked. "Exactly," I said. "Okay, we'll seize this for analysis." Then, they found the diary. It was in the bottom drawer of the desk, under a stack of folders. A regular spiral notebook, blue cover, worn. A name on the first page. Natalie. Just Natalie. No last name. Miller flipped through it, started reading in a low voice. Excerpts. Not the whole thing. I stood beside him and listened. Natalie wrote about how she started feeling sick after meals, how she would fall asleep too early, wake up with headaches, how she tried to talk to Victor, and he blamed it on stress, fatigue, how she started to be afraid to eat at home, how he pressured her about her share in the business, gently, persistently, with a smile, how she felt that something terrible was happening but couldn't believe it because he was always smiling. The last entry was just a few lines. The handwriting was different, weaker. "Mikey, my little one, forgive your mom. I couldn't protect myself. But you are strong. Tell someone good. You'll know how. You always knew how to pick good people. I didn't cry. I stood straight and didn't cry. Because if I started, I wouldn't stop. And I couldn't afford to stop now. She knew, I said. Based on the entries, she suspected, Miller said. Whether she knew for sure or not, the investigation will determine. He paused. This is an important document. Very important. Then they found things on his computer. In his browser history and in an email exchange with some lawyer, there were searches about inheritance laws, about transferring property with a pregnant spouse. The dates were recent, very recent. Miller didn't say anything, just wrote something down. They asked me to leave with Michael while the investigation in the house was ongoing. Mom was already packing our things. Michael was helping silently, putting his books in his backpack, the dinosaurs from his shelf, a toy car. Before leaving, he stopped at the threshold of his room, looked at the bed, the shelf, the framed photo on his nightstand. Natalie with a little Michael. She was laughing. He was looking at the camera seriously. Can we take the picture? He asked. Of course, I said. He took it carefully, with both hands, and put it in his backpack. We left. Donut walked beside Michael, pressing against his leg. Smart dog, he sensed it. Outside, Michael stopped, looked at the house. For a long time. Are we coming back here? He asked. No, I said honestly. Probably not. He thought about it, nodded. Okay, he said. I never liked this house anyway. We got in the car. Mom, me, Michael, Donut. We drove away. I watched in the side mirror as the house grew smaller, disappeared. Large, beautiful, brick with dark windows. I never went back. That night, we stayed with my parents. Mom had called Dad from the car, briefly. Stephen, we're on our way. Get the couch ready. Dad didn't ask any questions, just said, on it. When we arrived, he was standing on the doorstep in an old sweater, silent, reliable. He looked at Michael, held out his hand. Stephen, you can just call me Grandpa Steve? Michael shook his hand, seriously, like an adult. Michael, I know, Dad said. What's the dog's name? Donut. Good name. He can sleep in the kitchen. It's warmer there. And that was the entire introduction. No extra words, no extra questions. Michael fell asleep quickly, on the couch in the living room, under a blanket, Donut at his feet. Mom, Dad, and I sat in the kitchen. I told Dad the whole story again. He listened silently. When I finished, he stood up, went to the window, stood there for a moment, then said, Good thing you left. He didn't add anything else. For my dad, that was a lot. Victor was arrested the next day. He was coming back on a flight. Miller called me. He's in custody. The court will decide on bail. I sat in my mom's kitchen, holding the phone, and thought, so, it started. I felt strange. Not relief, it was too soon for relief. Just that something had shifted, something had fallen into place. Michael, when I told him, briefly, simply, without extra details, nodded. So, everything is right now? He asked. Everything is right now. He nodded again, went to feed Donut. The investigation lasted 7 months. I won't describe each of them in detail. It would be unbearable for me and for the reader. I'll just say the main thing. Those 7 months were the hardest of my life. Harder than the night Michael told me everything, because that night was action, movement, clarity. The investigation was waiting, long, grueling, with endless calls, summons, questions asked for the 3rd time. We lived with my parents. Mom gave me and Michael her bedroom, moved in with Dad herself. We're used to it. Slept together for 30 years, we'll manage. Donut settled in quickly, chose a corner in the hallway, and claimed it with the air of someone who had always lived there. Michael adjusted more slowly, but he adjusted. Dad didn't ask unnecessary questions. He didn't talk much in general. He just did things. He installed a hook in the room for Michael's backpack, fixed a creaky floorboard in the hallway. On weekends, he would take Michael to the garage, show him things, explain something about the engine. Michael would come back with greasy hands and a serious face, reporting to me, "We changed the oil today." I'd say, "Excellent." He would nod with dignity. Mom baked on Sundays. Not pies, strudel, cheese pastries, cookies with jam. At first, Michael watched from a distance, then he started coming closer. Then one day he asked himself, "Can I help?" Mom said, "Wash your hands and stand next to me." From then on, Sunday baking became their thing. I would watch them and think, this is what family is. Not words or grand promises. A hook for a backpack, an oil change, dough kneaded together. My belly grew. By the 6th month, it was impossible to pretend it wasn't there. It existed on its own, independently, reminding me of its presence with kicks at the most inconvenient times. Once, during a meeting with Detective Miller, I winced in the middle of a conversation. Miller stopped talking, alarmed. "Everything okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "It's just the baby kicking." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "A girl?" "A girl is good," he said, for no clear reason, and we went back to the case. A girl. I already knew. I found out at a routine ultrasound. I came up with a name right away, Annie. I just liked it. Soft, warm, like a blanket. Michael, when I told him, thought about it. "Annie," he repeated slowly, as if tasting it. "It's okay. Let's go with Annie." "I agree," I smiled, "but it's not like I get to choose." "Why not? You get to choose too. If you don't like it, say so." He thought some more. "No, I like it, Annie. It's good." So the two of us chose the name together. The state provided me with a lawyer, as the victim's side. The lawyer was an older man named Mr. Thompson, with a habit of speaking slowly and clearly, as if he were always dictating for the record. He explained what would happen in court, how the proceedings worked, what my rights were, what Michael's were. I listened attentively, took notes, prepared. Victor, meanwhile, was in custody. His lawyer, an expensive one from a good firm, was building a defense on a standard scheme. Natalie was taking the medication herself. She was mentally unstable. There was no proof of intent. About Michael, a 6-year-old child cannot be a reliable witness. A child's memory distorts events. The boy was likely influenced by his stepmother. That last part, about being influenced by his stepmother, I heard at a preliminary hearing, and I felt such a cold rage inside me that I almost stood up. I didn't. I sat straight and stared ahead. Miller told me later in the hallway, "Standard tactic. Don't pay it any mind. We have the body, we have the forensics, we have the diary, we have physical evidence, and we have the child's testimony, which matches the diary in details the boy couldn't have known from other sources." A pause. Hang in there. I hung in there. The trial began 7 months after the arrest. The courtroom was small, official, cold somehow, not in temperature, but in feeling. Plastic chairs, a flag in the corner, a seal on the wall. I sat in the front row for victims, next to Mr. Thompson. My belly was very noticeable by then, 8 months along. I saw Victor for the first time in all this time. He had changed, lost weight, grown paler, but he held himself straight and was still calm. When our eyes met, he squinted slightly, not with malice, but assessing, as if calculating something. I didn't look away. I looked straight at him until he was the one to turn away. The first hearings were formal, procedural. Then, testimony. Mine first. I spoke clearly, in order, about what I saw, what I felt, what I heard from Michael. Victor's lawyer tried to confuse me, asking questions quickly, one after another, interrupting. I answered slowly. "One moment, I'm finishing my thought." Mr. Thompson objected several times. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, Judge Thompson, with the face of someone whose long experience had given her an immunity to manipulation, sustained the objections. Then Michael. This was the day I feared the most, not for his testimony, but for him. What is it like for a 7-year-old boy to walk into a courtroom where his father is sitting and say all of that out loud? We had a long talk the night before. I didn't prepare him, didn't rehearse, didn't explain what to say. I just sat next to him. "Are you scared?" I asked. "A little. That's normal. Do you remember what courage is? Doing what you have to do, even when you're scared." "Exactly." He was quiet. Donut lay beside him. Michael was scratching behind his ear, mechanically, without looking. He will. He'll look at me, probably. Yes. And what should I do when he looks at me? I thought. Look at me. I'll be sitting right across from you. He nodded. Okay. In court, there's a special procedure for questioning a minor witness. A child advocate is present. Questions are asked carefully. Breaks can be taken if needed. Officer Chen was there. She had become friends with Michael over the months. He wasn't afraid of her. Michael walked into the courtroom. Small, in a sweater his grandmother had carefully dressed him in, hair combed. He sat down, searched for my eyes, found them. I gave a slight nod. He exhaled and looked at the judge. He spoke calmly, without hysterics, without tears, evenly, concretely, in his own words. About the white powder in small baggies, about the cabinet in the office where his dad kept them, about how his mom became sluggish and sleepy after meals, about his mom's words, tell someone good, about why he didn't eat at home. Victor's lawyer tried to ask a question. The judge stopped him. The phrasing is inappropriate for a child, he rephrased. Michael answered, short, precise, not letting himself get sidetracked. I looked at him and thought, where does he get it from? This inner resilience. From Natalie, I realized, it's her in him. Her calmness, her strength. She had managed to instill something very important in him while she was alive. After Michael was dismissed, he went out into the hallway. I followed him. He was standing by the wall, Chen beside him. You did great, I said. Did I say it right? Everything was right. He nodded, then said, Dad was looking at me. I didn't look at Dad. I looked at you. I saw. Did it help? Yes. I hugged him. He allowed it, pressed against me for a second, then straightened up. An adult again. The forensic report came back 2 months after Natalie's body was exhumed. They did it at the prosecution's request. They found traces of tranquilizers and sedatives in her tissues, which, with systematic use, have a cumulative effect, gradually suppressing bodily functions. The wording was bureaucratic, terrifying in its dryness. Natalie's diary was admitted into evidence. At one of the hearings, the prosecutor read excerpts from it. I listened to her voice, Natalie's voice, through someone else's words, and thought she was a real person. She liked apple pie and sang songs to her son, not very well. She read books about dogs. She was scared and didn't know who to tell. She knew she was dying, and still, she thought of Michael. After that hearing, I cried alone in my car for about 15 minutes. Then I wiped my face, called my mom. How's Michael? He's playing checkers with your dad. Everything's fine. Good. I'll be home soon. The verdict was announced in late spring. The courtroom was quiet. That special kind of quiet that comes before something important. Judge Thompson read in a monotone for a long time. I caught individual words, phrases, not everything. Intentional homicide, financial motive, systematic nature, evidence base. Victor stood straight and his expression didn't change. I think, until the very end, he didn't believe it would turn out this way. Or maybe he did, and he still stood straight because he didn't know how to do otherwise, because he only knew how to pretend. 22 years in a maximum security prison. When the judge finished, there was silence in the courtroom for a few more seconds, then movement, voices. Victor's lawyer was saying something quickly in his ear. Victor looked at me one last time. I didn't look away, just looked at him calmly. He turned away. I went out into the hallway. Mr. Thompson shook my hand. Take care. Chen gave me a brief, friendly hug. Miller nodded from a distance. I went outside. It was midday. Warm, sunny, real spring, with the smell of grass and warm asphalt. I stood on the steps, closed my eyes, and just turned my face to the sun. It was over. The divorce was finalized in parallel with the criminal trial. An expedited procedure when a spouse is convicted of a serious crime without his personal presence. Mr. Thompson explained the process, helped with the paperwork. I signed, received the divorce decree, a standard form, an official seal. I looked at it and thought, that's it. 7 months ago, I was a wife. Now I wasn't. A strange feeling. Not relief, not pain. Something neutral, almost empty, as if a door to a scary room had been slammed shut, and the door was now locked from the outside. No need to go back there. The apartment remained mine. It had always been only mine. I never did transfer any documents. That fact looked different now than it had before. Not stubbornness, not awkwardness with my husband. Instinct. Something inside knew. Don't touch it. Annie was born at the beginning of June. The labor was long, 16 hours. And I'm not going to pretend it was beautiful. It was hard, scary, and then suddenly, at some point, none of that mattered anymore because the nurse said, "Okay, Mom, breathe, look." And I heard a sound. The first cry. Thin, indignant, completely alive. They placed a small, red bundle on my chest. I looked at that face, wrinkled, unfamiliar, completely mine, and I couldn't speak, just held her. Annie. Mom and Dad were waiting in the hallway. When they moved me to a room and allowed visitors, Mom came in first, saw Annie in my arms, and started crying immediately, silently, without words. Tears just streamed down her face, and she didn't try to stop them. Dad came in after her, stood by the bed, looked at his granddaughter for a long time, then said, "She looks like you when you were little. Same nose." A pause. "She's a good one." For my dad, that was a long monologue. Michael came the next day. Mom brought him. He walked down the hallway seriously, holding a drawing. He had drawn something himself during the night, apparently. They showed it to me later. A house, a sun, 4 figures. A tall one, a small one, a very small one, and a dog. The caption, in a child's handwriting, "Our family." They brought him over to the bassinet. Annie was sleeping, small, quiet, with tiny fists by her cheeks. Michael looked at her for a long time, silently. "Well?" I asked. "She's small," he said. "Like a doll. She's your sister." He fell silent again. Then, carefully, almost without breathing, he reached out his hand and touched Annie's cheek with his finger. Annie didn't wake up, just wrinkled her nose a little. "She's warm," Michael said, surprised. "All people are warm." He pulled his hand back, straightened up, looked at me with that same serious gaze of his. "I'll protect her," he said. "I know how." I knew he knew how. He had protected me for a year, silently, in the only way he could. Protected me, didn't eat, was afraid, and still protected me. "I know," I said. "I'm counting on you." He nodded with satisfaction, as if we had signed a contract. Then he took out his drawing. "This is for you. I drew it last night so you could look at it and know how it's going to be." I took the drawing. A house, a sun, 4 figures. Our family. "Mikey," I said, "you wrote, 'Our family.' Yeah. You mean us?" He looked at me with slight confusion, as if to say, "Who else? You, me, Annie, and Donut," he said. "Who else?" I laughed. A real, light laugh. For the first time, in a very long time, I laughed lightly. He smiled too, just a little, with the corner of his mouth. But he smiled. Mom was in the doorway, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Dad stood next to her, pretending to look out the window. Annie slept. Michael stood by her bassinet, guarding her, serious, with the drawing in his hand. Our family. Exactly. I was in the hospital for 5 days. During those 5 days, I had a lot of time to think. I would lie awake at night, when Annie was sleeping, stare at the ceiling, and sort through everything that had happened in the last year. Not with pain anymore, but with a kind of calm sobriety, like sorting through old things before a move. This we take, this we leave, this we throw away. Throw away. Fear. That house, that silence. Those evenings with the mug of tea on the edge of the counter. The image of Victor, how he seemed and who he really was. Throw all of it away. Not suppressing it, not hiding it, but throwing it away. Consciously. Take Michael, Annie, Mom and Dad. Miller, who spoke dryly but did his job right. Chen, who knew how to talk to children. Mr. Thompson, with his monotone voice and precise words. Everyone who was there and didn't let me down. Take what I learned about myself, that I know how not to fall apart when I need to hold it together. that I know how to listen to children, to people, to situations, that I know how to do what needs to be done, even when I'm scared. Take Michael's drawing. Our family. A house. A son. 4 figures. When my mom came to pick me up, I walked out of the hospital with Annie in my arms, a bag over my shoulder, and a light heart. Not because it was all behind me, a lot was still to come, but because I knew I could handle it. I already had. I would handle what came next. Michael was waiting by the car, shifting from foot to foot, nervous, though he tried not to show it. When I got closer, he craned his neck, looked at Annie. She's just as small as she was in the hospital. She is. She'll grow, very quickly, he thought. Then I have to hurry and remember her when she's small, he said seriously. Mom laughed. I laughed. Dad smiled quietly, opening the trunk. We drove home. The issue of custody came up on its own. Michael had been living with me for almost a year. He had no other home. Natalie's parents, elderly, Helen and Nicholas, lived in another state. They called me themselves when they found out about everything. The conversation was difficult, long, with tears on their end. They wanted to take Michael. I understood that desire, but they could barely manage on their own. Health, age, distance. In the end, Helen said, "Lily, you're a good person. Do you love him?" I said, "I love him like he's my own." A long silence. Then let him stay with you. Natalie would have wanted him to be with a good person. They came to visit a year later. Helen cried a lot, looked at Michael, stroked his head. Michael endured it. He knows how to endure. She asked him, "Are you happy, Mikey?" He thought, said, "Yes. I have Mom, Lily, and my sister Annie, and Donut, and Grandpa Steve." She cried again, but differently this time. The custody process took several months. Paperwork, committees, inspections. The social worker, Maria, a stern, attentive woman, used to seeing right through people, visited us twice, looked at the apartment, talked to Michael separately. When she asked him, "Michael, are you happy here?" he said, "Yes. Lily cooks well and doesn't put anything bad in the food. And she smells nice, like a kind mom." Maria wrote something in her papers with a completely unreadable face. But as she was leaving, she said to me quietly in the hallway, "Everything is fine, Lily. Don't worry." I received the custody papers in late fall. A standard document, an official form. I looked at it and thought, now it's official. Although for me, for both of us, it had become official that night when he came to me in the dark and told me everything. We moved into my apartment, the one bedroom my grandmother had left me. We had to rearrange things a bit. The smaller room became the kids' room for Michael and Annie. The larger one was mine. Dad came over with his tools, spent 2 weekends in the apartment, nailing, moving, fixing. Mom brought new, light-colored curtains. Michael chose the wallpaper for his corner. He thought for a long time, chose one with little cars. Grown-ups like cars too, he explained seriously. Annie stayed with her grandparents during the renovations, and so did Donut. When we finally moved in and brought them both home, Michael ceremoniously showed Annie around. Of course, she didn't understand anything, just lay in her tiny world and looked at the ceiling. But Michael explained anyway. "This is your bed. This is mine. This is the window. The sun comes in here in the morning." I checked. Annie looked at the ceiling. She agrees, Michael decided. The apartment gradually filled up, unhurriedly, with sounds, smells, life. In the mornings, Michael getting ready for preschool, and then for school when he started. In the middle of the day, Annie, who was growing surprisingly fast, as if she were in a hurry to catch up to her brother. In the evenings, dinner, conversations, Donut by the radiator. Sometimes I would stop in the middle of it all. Dishes half washed, just standing there and thinking, this is it. This is what I wanted. A family. Not the one I imagined, a different one. Harder, one, and better. On the first anniversary of Natalie's birthday after she passed, Michael asked me if we could go to the cemetery. I didn't ask any questions, didn't probe, just said, "Of course, let's go." We took flowers. He chose them himself, white lilies. Mom liked white. Annie stayed with her grandma. The two of us went, me and Michael. It was quiet at the cemetery, and it smelled of damp leaves. Michael walked beside me, carrying the flowers. We found the grave, well kept, with a photograph. Natalie looked out from the photo, young, blonde, with a smile. I could see Michael in her. The same expression, the same seriousness in her eyes. Michael laid the flowers down, stood there silently, then said, "Mom, this is Lily. She's good. Don't worry." I didn't say anything, just stood beside him. We stood there a little longer, then walked back. Michael took my hand, on his own, without me offering. He walked beside me, silent. At the cemetery gate, he said, "It's good that you're here." Just like that, without looking at me, looking ahead. "It's good that you're here," I replied. We got in the car and drove home. To Annie, to Mom, to Dad, to Donut. Home. Michael allowed himself to be called Michael Sr. When Annie grew a little and started reaching for him, he solemnly announced, "I am now the big brother. It's a serious position." Dad asked, "And what are your duties?" Michael thought. "To protect, to explain, and to make sure Donut doesn't eat her toys." Dad nodded. "Important work." Michael agreed, without a smile, but with obvious pleasure. Every Sunday, we all got together, at our place or at my parents'. It became a rule on its own. No one specifically arranged it. It just happened that way and stayed that way. Sunday means everyone together. At these Sunday dinners, the most important things happened. Not loud, not ceremonial. Michael would talk about school. Annie would reach for the plates and try to grab everything at once. Dad would fix something in the apartment while everyone was eating. Mom would offer seconds without asking. I would sit in the middle of it all and think, this is it. This is what's called happiness. Not loud, not festive, just plates on the table, voices, warmth. Everyone is alive and here. Everyone is alive. That's not a given. I know now, I know for sure, that it's not a given. 2 years have passed. I'm 32, Michael is 8, Annie is 1.5. If someone had told me a year ago that in 2 years, I would be standing in the kitchen at 7 a.m., stirring oatmeal with one hand, holding on to Annie, who is trying to climb onto a chair, with the other, listening to Michael in the hallway looking for his other sock while talking aloud about dinosaurs, I probably wouldn't have believed it. Not because it's impossible, but because I couldn't imagine such a morning back then. An ordinary, chaotic, a little noisy morning. Now I can. Now this is my life. Michael, the sock is in the drawer under your bed, I say, without turning around. I looked there. Look again. A pause. Found it. Annie finally climbs onto the chair. I steady her lightly by her waist. She immediately reaches for the bowl. A serious young lady. Annie has been like that since birth. She knows what she wants and goes for it in the most direct way. Donut circles underfoot, hoping something will fall. Something always falls. Annie isn't very good with a spoon yet. Michael comes out of the hallway, already in his uniform, backpack on his shoulder, looks at his sister. She's eating with her hands again. She's learning. I knew how to use a spoon at her age. You didn't eat anything at her age, I say calmly. He thinks for a second, then admits, that's true. He sits at the table, takes his oatmeal, eats neatly, methodically. Michael always eats neatly. It's a habit left over from the times when food was something dangerous. But now he eats for real, a full meal. The doctor says, he's caught up to the normal range. Everything is fine. I heard that and thought, caught up. In 2 years, he caught up. Math test today, Michael announces between spoonfuls. Are you ready? Ready. The 7s times table is hard, but I learned it. Good job. Grandpa Steve helped me on Sunday. He says math is like fixing things. You have to understand how it works. Then it'll all work out. He's right. Michael nods. He loves quoting his grandpa. Seriously. As if passing down generational wisdom. My dad doesn't know about this. If he found out, he'd be embarrassed. He doesn't like praise. But Michael chose for himself what to pass on. Meanwhile, Annie has smeared oatmeal on her nose. She looks at me as if it's my fault. I say, reaching for a napkin. Bubba, Annie says. This means anything and everything. Approval, a demand, just a sound. Annie doesn't say many words yet, but she has a lot of intonations. Bubba, Michael agrees seriously. Annie looks at him, smiles, a wide, toothless smile. No, wait, she has 4 teeth on the bottom now. Michael smiles back, not widely. He always smiles reservedly, but he smiles. These two found each other somehow, on their own, not through me, between themselves. From the very beginning, Michael treated Annie with a special kind of seriousness, like a responsible project. He explained the world to her in detail, while she couldn't understand a word. This is Donut, you can't pull his tail. It hurts him. This is the window. Outside the window is the yard. We'll go play there when it gets warmer. This is a book. Letters make words. I'll show you later. Annie would listen, looking at him with the same serious expression. When she started taking her first steps a few weeks ago, unsteady, wobbly, Michael stood nearby, his hands held out at her height, just in case. Not supporting her, just spotting her. She walked from the couch to the armchair, 3 steps, fell, and laughed. Michael exhaled. Good job, he told her. Again. She went again. I stood in the doorway, watching them. I thought, he always spots her like that, doesn't oversupport, lets her walk on her own. He learned on his own, he knows that's the right way. School has changed him, in a good way. At preschool, he was quiet and withdrawn. In school, he found his people, 2 friends. Adam, loud and freckled, and Daniel, as calm as Michael. They go to the chess club together after school. Michael suggested it himself, because his grandpa taught him to play over the summer, and it turned out to be interesting. His homeroom teacher, Miss Peterson, told me at the first parent-teacher conference, "Your son is very observant. He always notices if someone is upset." Recently, a boy in class fell and started crying. Your Michael was the first one to go over, calmly, without any fuss. The other kids were at a loss, but he was right there. That's a rare quality, I thought later. He learned to notice when someone is upset, because for a long time, he was the one who was upset, and no one noticed. Now he notices for others. After the conference, I told him what the teacher said. He listened, then said, "Well, it wasn't hard for me to go over. That's what makes a good person." He thought, "Or just a normal person," he said. "Normal people go over when someone is upset." I didn't argue. Let him think it's normal. Let that be his normal. Sundays are sacred for us. It just happened that way. No one planned it. No one specifically arranged it. It's just that every Sunday, my parents come over, or we go to their place. Sometimes they stay with us. Mom takes over the kitchen in the morning. Dad tackles some small household chore. Michael helps one or the other. Annie gets underfoot with the air of a full-fledged family member. Last Sunday, we all cooked together. Mom was making cabbage rolls. No, wait, Mom was making cheese buns. I was making soup. Dad was in the hallway, changing an outlet. It's been needing it. I'll handle it. Michael, whom no one had asked, stood next to me at the stove and said, "Teach me how to fry something." Fry what? Anything. Grandpa says a man should know how to cook at least one thing. Grandpa's right, I said. We'll learn to make meatballs. We formed the meatballs together. Michael kneaded the ground beef with a focused expression. The shapes were a bit lopsided. It's okay. It doesn't change the taste. Then, for the first time, he placed a meatball on the skillet himself, holding it carefully with both hands, turning his face slightly away from the splattering oil. "Don't be afraid of the oil," I said. "Hold it steady." "I'm not afraid," he said. "I'm being careful. That's the right way." The meatballs turned out a little uneven and slightly overcooked on one side. Michael brought a plate to his grandpa with the air of someone presenting an award. "I made them," he said. Dad took one, tried it, didn't rush his judgment, chewed thoughtfully, as he does everything. "They're all right," he said. "Use a little more heat next time." "Next time?" Michael repeated. "Yeah, you gotta practice." Michael sat up straight, pleased, so pleased you could see it even though he was trying not to show it. "I'll practice," he said. The table was crowded and noisy. Mom was talking about a neighbor. Annie was banging her spoon on her plate. Donut was making the rounds under the table, nudging knees, hoping for a handout. Dad was eating silently. I looked at everyone in turn, at Mom, at Dad, at Michael, at Annie, and I thought that I would remember this moment intentionally, consciously remember this noise, this light, these faces. Then Michael suddenly fell silent, sat there looking at his plate, not sad, but thoughtful. "Lily," he said. "Yeah?" A long, almost awkward pause. "Can I call you Mom?" Mom stopped talking at the table. Dad put down his spoon. Annie kept banging hers, oblivious to the silence. I looked at Michael. He was looking at me, directly, steadily, seriously. An 8-year-old boy who knows how to make adult decisions. "Of course," I said. "I would love that, Michael." He nodded once, briefly, as he always does when he's made a decision, and closed the topic. "Then Annie and I have the same mom," he said. "That's right, it is," I agreed. "Good." And he went back to eating, as if nothing special had happened. Mom, at the table, dabbed her eyes with the corner of her apron. Dad picked up his spoon again and started eating, but I noticed he turned to the window for a second. I looked at Michael and thought, everything is right. This is exactly how it should be. Not because it was planned that way, none of this was planned. Life just arrived at this point on its own, through a roundabout path, through terror, through a long journey, but it arrived. Annie banged her spoon. Donut lay under the table. Dad was silent by the window. Michael ate the meatballs he had fried himself. Mom looked at all of us and seemed perfectly happy, with that quiet, steady happiness that only people who have lived long enough to understand know. There is no loud happiness. Happiness is this: a table, people, light, warmth. In the evening, when everyone had left, I was tucking Michael into bed. He lay there, looking at the ceiling. "Mom," he said, the first time, just like that. Not a question, not a request, just testing how it sounded. "Yes," I answered. "Nothing. Just... it's clear now." I turned off the light, went out, closed the door, and stopped in the hallway. Donut came over, nudged my hand with his nose. "Mom." 1 word, 3 letters. Nothing special, and absolutely everything. I petted Donut, went to my room. Annie was breathing softly in her crib, quietly, evenly, with the air of someone who has already lived a rich life and is now deservedly resting. I lay down, looked at the ceiling. Outside, the autumn city, streetlights, the sound of occasional cars, a normal evening. And I thought, not for the first time, but each time in a new way, about how strangely life is arranged. I had married a dream, married the right words, the cozy image of a family, a man who knew how to seem. I almost paid for it with everything. And the family was given to me by a 6-year-old boy who didn't eat, who was silent and observed, and was afraid, and still didn't eat because he was afraid for me, who waited for the right moment and chose it correctly at night, when his father wasn't home, when it was safe to talk. Who said, "Mom said, tell someone good, you're good." He chose me. That is probably the most important thing that has ever happened to me. Not the wedding, not the divorce, not the trial. This. That he chose me. I didn't deserve it specifically. I was just there. I just listened. I just didn't brush it off when something inside me said, "Look closer. Look." Sometimes that's enough. Just to look and to listen. Sometimes that's exactly what saves you. Annie breathed a little louder, turned over in her sleep. I listened. Her breathing evened out. Good. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow is Monday. Michael has school. Annie will be with my mom for the day. I have a routine doctor's appointment. Then pick up Michael, pick up Annie, make dinner, call my mom, check Michael's homework, feed Donut, who is always fed last and always acts like it's an injustice. A normal day. A good day. This is exactly what it means to live. Not the life I invented for myself. The one I chose. And I choose it every morning, every Sunday dinner, every untouched plate in the past, and every plate licked clean in the present. Every time Michael says mom without thinking, just like that, because it's the truth. This is family. Not the one you dream of, the one you choose. I sometimes think it's a strange thought, but it comes to me that everyone has their own Michael in their life. Their own person who is silently doing something important while you're not noticing, who endures and waits and chooses the right moment, who speaks simple words about terrible things, and in the simplicity of those words lies all the strength. You just have to be able to hear it. I've been a preschool teacher for 10 years now. 7 before and 3 after. After is completely different. I look at children differently, not better or worse, just more sharply. I know now that behind silence, there can be so much. Behind I'm not hungry, a whole world that a child doesn't know how to name. I try to be the person they can tell. Natalie asked Michael to find a good person. I think about that, about what a responsibility it is to be a good person. Not a hero, not perfect, just good. Someone who listens, someone who doesn't leave, someone who picks up the phone at 11:30 at night and says, "I'll be on the first bus." My mom taught me that. My dad, with his silence and reliability. Michael, with his trust. Annie is teaching me now, every day, something new. That the world is huge and interesting. That you might not catch the pigeon, but it will come for bread on its own. That pity is sometimes the only right word. That it's enough to say, "Ma," and Mom will come. I always come. That's basically all I wanted to tell you. No, not all. There's one more thing. One day, very recently, Michael asked me. We were walking home from school, a normal evening. He was telling me something about a lesson. Then he suddenly fell silent and asked, "Mom, were you scared back then? You know, when all that was happening?" "I was scared," I said. "Very. And what helped?" I thought honestly. "You helped," I said. "You and my parents, and the fact that I had to do things, not be scared." He nodded. "I was scared too," he said, "when I told you. I know, but you said that's what courage is." Yes. I remembered. I'm glad. We walked on. He was carrying his backpack. I was carrying a bag of groceries. A normal evening. He took my hand, just like that, the way you do when you're close and comfortable. I squeezed his hand. We were walking home. Sometimes in the evenings, when everyone is asleep and I'm alone in the kitchen with my mug of tea poured at myself, I know how much I think, what if I hadn't heard him back then? Not that night when he told me, no, earlier. When he was looking at my plate, when he said, "Don't drink it," when he answered the doctor, when it's not scary, what if I had brushed it off? I'm tired, I have a lot to do, kids can be strange, give him time. What if I hadn't allowed myself to worry, hadn't started observing, hadn't stayed and sat beside him in the dark for as long as it took? I don't know what would have happened then. I know one thing. Worrying about children is not pointless. Listening to them is not pointless. Sitting beside them in the dark is not pointless. That is the job, not the one you get paid for, the one that's more important. My mom told me once, a long time ago, I was still in college and we were arguing about something, I don't even remember what. "Lily, the most important thing is to be there. Everything else will follow." I nodded then and, honestly, didn't think much of it. It seemed like a cliché. Now I know it's not a cliché. It's the most accurate thing anyone has ever told me. Be there. Just 2 words. Everything else will follow. It did. Donut wanders into the kitchen, his claws clicking on the floor. He looks at me. He can't seem to sleep either. "Go lie down," I say. He sighs, goes and settles in the hallway. That's his spot. He chose it himself. Outside, it's dark and quiet. A city night. Not dead, no. There's always some distant noise. Cars, someone's life. But in the apartment, it's quiet. The kids are asleep. My parents are at home in their apartment, a 10-minute drive away. Everyone is alive. Everyone is close. I finish my tea, put the mug in the sink, turn off the light, and go to bed. Tomorrow will be a good day. I know it for sure. There's a word. Healing. It always seemed a bit bookish to me, not alive. Because when you're healing, you don't feel it as a separate event. You don't wake up one morning and think, "Okay, done, I'm healed." It happens little by little, almost imperceptibly, through the meatballs you fry with your son, through your daughter's first steps, through Saturday breakfasts when everyone is at the same table, through the word mom, said just like that in the dark, just to check if I'm here. I'm here, always here. I think about Natalie often, almost every day, about how she'll never know how it all turned out, how Michael grew up, how he talks like an adult, eats neatly, plays chess with his grandpa, and teaches his sister not to pull pigeons' tails, how he laughs, a real, free laugh, when he thinks no one is watching. I'm watching. Natalie, your son is a good person. You managed to do the most important thing, and what you told him, at the end, it worked. He found a good person and told them. We made it, now, it's all, I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow will be a good day. Thank you for listening to the end. If you found this story interesting, subscribe to the channel and give it a like so you don't miss new videos.